I'm going to talk a little bit shorter than I did the first time, but just to give you an idea of some specifics now of what we're doing, the actual projects we're doing. You've heard a few details from the staff in Fushkosov and where we're working, because we've expanded from that project, that initial work through Jelana and her family and what that led us to in Fushkosov. And then some ideas for what we want to do and what we hope you can offer, the various kinds of things that people can offer to support us. So just in summary, first of all, the things we do, because it's quite hard to keep them all kind of in a list. So I've just got sort of bullet points for the things that we are doing. Getting children to school and helping them to stay there. And that means helping with school resources, with academic support, with the mediation, physiotherapy for children who need it, and the Girls Club, which actually Rabia was going to tell you about, but perhaps I'll tell you in a little more detail shortly. The Little Teachers scheme. You would have heard from one of the Little Teachers had we had the video, so I'm going to tell you what that is now, because it's been a very successful project that has cost us no money. We've done it purely on volunteer time, and it's one of those kind of helping the community to help others in need, helping those in need to help others in need, which we've started doing in the last year. One of the issues, and this links partly to Graham's question, is that there is not one single member of staff in that school that the children go to who is from the Roma Ashkali or Egyptian community. Not a single teacher, not a cleaner, not a secretary, there is no one. And there are actually 600 children from the community who go to that school. In the first grade, they are just under, I think they are 49% of the class now. So there really ought to be much better representation of that community in the staff. And there are all kinds of reasons for that, the same kinds of reasons that we have in this country, where we have poor representation in institutions. But one of them is that there isn't a trained group of people from the Roma Ashkali Egyptian community who could be employed as a teacher. There are, to my knowledge, not a single trained teacher from that community in Fushkosov. There are a few in some other communities in Kosovo. And until that changes, I think it's going to be very hard for the school to change its attitude to those children and the problems that they bring. Because once you've got people on the staff who understand that, then I think everybody's attitude starts to change, the children and the staff. And that's a very long-term issue, but we realised that we did need to start doing some work on it if we were going to change things in the long term. So we started this group called the Little Teachers, who were given a T-shirt. We chose 10 children, 5 boys and 5 girls, who were between the age of 12 and 16, and who were bright enough that they were sort of getting on okay at school. We had no particular criteria for them to be the best students, but they needed to be clearly able to handle the school and to go on from school. And more importantly, that they had those aspects of their character, that leadership or that initiative, that we thought that they could become teachers in the future. And so we said we would choose them, and if they were happy to be part of this group, they would get a session every Thursday with biscuits, and we would give them some training on how to be a teacher. And in the short term, they would then be able to work with us on Saturdays, working with the children who needed help with basic learning to write their name, or learning their alphabets or their times tables, or sort of repetitive kind of learning. And they would then get experience of being a teacher. And we would give the expectation, no force, that they would, when they left primary school, go on to the high school for teachers, and we would support them through it. And then they would go to university, and we would support them through that. It's too early to know whether that's had an effect. It's only been going for a year. But what it has given us is just at least that aspiration within the community, that it is possible for somebody from this community to be a teacher in the future. And in the short term, it's given us 10 more people helping at our Saturday activities and 10 great role models for the children. And actually, the scheme has expanded from those 10. We've had more kids wanting to join. It's become, you get a T-shirt, you get a biscuit. It's become quite a high-status profession. And so they're a really great group of young people who are hopefully supporting to be a really great group of school staff in the future. We've talked a little bit about antenatal classes. We've just made a few references to that. You saw the pictures on Charlie's wonderful video. So we now have 20 women every week coming to antenatal classes. And that, I suppose, is the logical conclusion of the kindergarten. I was saying, an investment at 3 is worth doing because it makes less need at 9. Well, of course, an investment at 3 months is even better because you have a healthy pregnancy, a healthy baby. And so we're supporting mothers with iron tablets, for example, because a lot of them are very anemic. We have a trained midwife who comes once a week, who's paid for by LiveLink, which is a very small charity working in Kosovo. And she works with Bayram Shah, who is one of the change makers I pointed out before, who's from the community, who hasn't got any training, but is shadowing Ilmia, the midwife. And in fact, the reason Bayram Shah is not in the room with Husni and Yashar, ready to Skype with us, is that she's currently on a training course in Albania with Ilmia, learning about palliative care, which is the next thing we want to work on, because there is no palliative care at all in Kosovo, not even if you want to pay for it. And so just the concept of end-of-life care and supporting families around end-of-life care as well as patients is something that we're wanting to do. So Bayram Shah and Ilmia, that's the midwife standing next to her. And so that's 20 women a week, and when they have their baby, then we give them a little baby pack that's put together by Hilary and various others with some blankets and some baby clothes and some nappies and some cream and the bucket, which is probably the most practical. Like, I always want to give them a teddy. You can see the parents' eyes lighting up at the bucket, and the teddy is sort of like, further down the needs hierarchy. So that's been a really successful project, talking about healthy pregnancy and also then healthy parenting as well, and nutrition and breastfeeding and things that will help the children beyond. The Changemakers Kindergarten I've told you about, but I wanted to take the opportunity to show that cute photograph. Janjevo you've heard a little bit about already. This is the town of Janjevo when you saw the photographs in that in the presentation. Janjevo is one of the places that we're doing our microfinance project. So we talked about the soap and the bags, and you've seen the jewellery. In Janjevo, the microfinance is supporting other women artisans in making the candles, for example, making some of the jewellery. The bead jewellery is from Janjevo, and also supporting families in having guest houses and tour guide services so that we can start a small pro-poor tourism around this really very extraordinary town. It's unique in Europe, Janjevo, as it's the only landlocked town in Europe that has only one road in or out. If anybody can disprove that, I want to hear from them. But this is what we've been told. I even put it on Facebook and challenged people to correct me. But apparently there are no others. It's this nestled in this valley with just one road in. Probably more importantly, it's the only town in Kosovo that has had not a single interethnic killing, either before the war in 1999 or during the war or since, and not a single house burnt as a part of ethnic tensions. And it has an extremely mixed population. So it used to be a predominantly Croatian town. The Croatian population mainly moved to Croatia once Croatia got independence, but there is still a significant Croatian minority, and you'll see the Catholic Church there. But it also has an Albanian population, who are the majority now, a Turkish population, Roma and Ashkali, Bosnian. So it's a wonderfully rich and peaceful community, which is a real privilege to work in, and a lovely place to visit. And some others that I haven't mentioned. We have a small project we've just started with support from Microsoft, supporting blind people in Jakova to learn Braille on computer programs. I mentioned already the medical help. We've paid for 10 operations for boys who had hernias. One of the boys was 9, and he was born with that hernia, so he'd had the hernia for 9 years and had been stopped from going to school because it was so painful, because he couldn't walk. And an operation costs about €100. So, the amount of money compared to the impact on the life of a 9-year-old who's been suffering for all that time. And glasses, contraception, which we make available to women or men who come to us, and the palliative care. I talked about the bursaries, the adult skills that Donietta was half talking about. We have a project in Fushkosov, but also in Obilic, which is the town by the power station, not particularly des res in Kosovo. We have an adult literacy project there. The clothing distribution and the gardening project, which I know you will know a little bit about because of your seeds and from Celia's descriptions, which was the brainchild of Coxie and Graham, one of the Grahams, when they came out, I think 2 years ago, we talked about this. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have a gardening project so that we could improve the quality of the nutrition of the families, but it would also be an opportunity for earning money. So we finally, last month, got money from the Finnish embassy to run this project with 20 families, 10 in Janjevo and 10 in Fushkosov. It will be the women from the mothers from the families who are the point of contact, and they'll be given 2 plots each. They'll either be in pallet boxes or old tyres, or it can be in the earth if they've got space, but not all of them have. And one of the plots will be for growing their own vegetables for their own family, and the other will be growing herbs that will be sold for them to raise money. I've got a particular hope that I'm finally going to get coriander in Kosovo. There is no coriander in Kosovo and I really miss it, and apparently that can grow easily. And we're also getting advice that the lavender that is in the bags is from a wonderful organic farmer in Albania who I've got to know and who's coming to do some training for the women on how to grow aromatic herbs. I think lavender takes a long time to grow, but he was also advising on tea, like chamomile for tea, for example. And so this is a whole new world opening up to us, and as my parents' full testament, it's a whole new world for me. The idea that I'm running a sewing and a gardening project is slightly ironic, which is why we need help. Right, so we have 5 municipalities where we're currently working. There's a map, for those of you who are familiar with Kosovo, you'll know where these places are already. This is Pristina. By the way, for those of you who haven't been to Kosovo, because there are some in the room, Kosovo is the size of Devon. So just kind of shrink your picture of it. It's roughly this pentagon shape. Pristina sort of in the middle. And Fushkosov just outside Pristina here. It's about 8 kilometres away. Janjevo, the town with only one way in and out, is here. So not much further from Pristina. It takes about 40 minutes to get there. And Obilic, where the power station is and where we're doing the adult literacy programme, is there. And then Istok, which is where the women are sewing the bags, is right over in the northwest here. And Jakova, which is where the Society of the Blind project is down in the southwest. But I mean, that takes about an hour and a half to drive, I suppose, or hour and 3/4. So just to give you an idea of our spread. But our biggest project is Fushkosov, and our most wraparound project, where we're working on so many fronts, which I think is one of the reasons it's our most successful project. Anyway, given all of that, what can you offer? I feel quite strongly that different people have different things to offer, and people sometimes feel awkward about wanting to be a volunteer because they have got no time, or people apologise for giving us money because they say I'm sorry that it's not enough, or people say, well, all I've got to offer, I have no money, I have no time, but I can just repost your things on Facebook. And I've realised now there are 4 quite distinct kinds of contribution that are all extremely valuable, and without each of them it wouldn't be possible to have a functioning charity. And those are the skills, items, things in kind, money, and money is useful. I mean, I think there's also sometimes people saying, oh, well, I could give you a pencil, and well, could you give me the money for a pencil and I'll buy it in Kosovo? And social networks, which I think is probably the least valued of the 4 and should be far more valued. So these are some of the things that we need volunteers for. The minimum we ask for is a week, because we found that if volunteers come for just 3 or 4 days, by the time we've told them what we're doing and shown them where the loos are, and we've kind of not got the full benefit of their time. But we have plenty of people who come out for a week or a month, students who come out for a summer, people who come to do a block of teaching, 1 day a week as part of some other thing. We have people who live in Kosovo as expats who come regularly. We have a wonderful Dutch woman who does Zumba classes in kindergarten every 2 weeks, which is a terrifying sight. And we have people who work in this country who some of our volunteers have never been to Kosovo, but who follow what we're doing, Skype with us, understand what we need, and help us with, well, I've listed the things here. We need computer teaching. And we have translators, so that's for adults. We don't need people who are faced by children. We also need English teaching a lot for adults and for children. We need help with our social media, and I mean, so for actually posting, not just for reposting, but people to manage those accounts. Our Instagram account was set up by a very inspirational young American woman who was with us for about 3 months, and now she's gone. I don't have Instagram on, I don't have an iPad or an iPhone, and we're really struggling with actually keeping that going. We've got people who joined us and followed us or whatever on Instagram, and now we're not sharing what we're doing. Then there's other things that don't need translation or English because they communicate without translation, art and dance and music and sports. So, and surprisingly, those are things we have very little of. We don't, I don't know for what the reason is, but we occasionally have people coming out, like the group Harry came with, who did a week of art and music. The children just responded and blossomed to it, but we don't have anyone on an ongoing basis for that. So those are really appreciated. We need help with fundraising, which means all kinds of things. It means fundraising like, organising events or sponsored things or convincing people to contribute to an appeal. But it also means writing quite tedious documents for the Finnish embassy in order to get the money to do that gardening project. Filling in the risk assessment that they need or turning our objectives into their template. Those things are extremely time consuming. They're being done by me and also by our staff, Donietta and Anna Mona, who don't have English as a first language. So, people who can help with editing documents or with structuring the text for that is very helpful. We need help with marketing our microfinance projects. We have the czar of soaps with us. Ben has been hawking our soaps around chic shops in London for us. I was doing a talk earlier this week at Heathfield School and saying that we needed help with all kinds of things. And one of the girls there said, well, I don't know anything about marketing, but I do know what teenagers in independent schools like to buy. And I'm like, that's something I don't know, and no one in our group knows that. So that's what you can contribute. You can tell us how we can market our products to your friends. We need help in our kindergarten, whether it's Zumba or, helping with all of the activities that go on in kindergarten. And then really importantly, things we haven't thought of yet. Most of the stuff that we do that has been most successful only came about because a volunteer said, well, I could do Zumba. I could, for example, the clothing distribution was the idea of a gap year student who said, look, there's loads of rich people here who must be getting rid of their clothes. I'll help organise that. So we are, one of our strengths, I think, is that we are open to ideas and then running with them. So I'm sure there are things we haven't thought of that we need you to tell us. And then we do need funding as well as skills. The things in particular that we're looking for funding for at the moment are the kindergarten. The kindergarten was funded originally by an online appeal that we did through Global Giving, where we amazingly, and with thanks to some people in this room, managed to raise $10,000, which is what we needed to start the kindergarten, entirely from individuals. And that was the first time we've done anything significant, as significant as that, for a specific appeal. And that's great, and that got us started. We've now got some money from Raiffeisen Bank, but actually we still don't have enough money to keep it going beyond the end of October, which is the first year that we committed to. And we have now seen how popular it is, the impact it's had, and we really want to keep it going. So the costs aren't huge. A kindergarten educator costs €300 a month. So, compared to British teachers' salaries, this is nothing. But finding €300 a month every month is a challenge for us. So that's probably our biggest worry, because it would be just a tragedy for those 3-year-olds to have had a year of, the alphabet and songs and primary colours, and then to be told that they've got to go home before they'd get to primary school. It would break everything that we were trying to achieve. Rabia, who you just heard introduce herself before we gave up on the Skype, is our community education assistant. So Husni started doing that job, visiting every family every week, checking the kids were going to school. But then December was a very hard month for us, and I told you about the boy who died, which really touched all of us, I think, in lots of ways, partly because it's obviously just a terrible thing, and partly because we felt that we hadn't reached that child. There was a 7-year-old in Fushkosov who wasn't in school and as a result died because he was out in the rubbish. And, we thought we had done more than that. But we also had a bad month in December because one of the girls that we registered for school when she was 9, who's now 13, got married, which is something that happens, young marriages, early marriages in this community, but had never happened that young and not to any of the children that we had got into school. So more often it's girls getting married at, say, 16, which is younger than is good for their education, but is not illegal and not necessarily bad for their health. But 13 was just something that we all found really hard. And we had a really hard job to decide what to do about that. We were aware of a very clear violation of her rights, of her health, but at the same time we knew that to raise it with anyone would bring shame on her and her family, and it was one of the hardest challenges I think we've had. And there was differences of opinion within our team about it as well, which made it hard. Anyway, in the end we did decide we would go to social services, and social services brought the police, and she was taken from her husband's home and sent back to her home. And of course, neither she nor anyone in her family will speak to me now, and I'm not sure whether I've achieved anything for her. But what we were determined to achieve was that wasn't going to happen again. And so one of the things we do is that Bayanam Shah has started lessons with all the girls who attend the teenagers who come to our classes about sexual health and family planning, and about the kind of getting to know their bodies, which we think will probably help. On the other end, we've started this girls' club to try to get girls who are in school to think about their aspirations for their future, to see themselves as agents of change in their own lives, as people who can make decisions about what will happen to them, who have rights. And so 2 of our volunteers, an American volunteer and a Kosovo Albanian, run those classes for about 20 girls. And they're a bit like guides or something, they kind of come together. They have biscuits too. They also they do craft activities, but at the same time they talk about those issues. And they've started once a month. They've now got a speaker coming in for one of the 4 activities, 1 in 4, to talk about careers. To talk about a woman talking about how I got to where I am. So we've got a singer coming in next week. We've got a doctor who's going to come in. We've got people sharing that route to taking charge of your own. Your destiny. And the other thing we realised we needed to do was that Husni is fantastic and just so committed and hardworking and respected in his community. But he is a man in his 30s. And we realised that we needed to have a mediator who was a young woman who could be talking to the girls who were in school and who were at risk of dropping out or of early marriage. So we employed Rabia, who you heard, who's 22, I think, and is a very dynamic and lovely young woman. And she works part-time, it's just half time. So she costs €150 a month. And we had a one-off grant that gave us the confidence to employ her, but that grant has now run out. So we are just on a wing and a prayer with her salary, because we really don't want to lose it, but we haven't got an ongoing source of funding for it. So every month, luckily there's this private donation or that one-off, or someone runs a marathon, and we kind of cobble together enough to keep that post going. But that's something we would love to have more ongoing funding, so that she can help with those girls' clubs, with one-to-one visits, with the sexual health teaching. We want to give a healthy snack to the children who come to our Saturday activities. Normally it's a piece of fruit and a fruit juice, but that costs, and when you have 120 children coming, that costs quite a lot. So that's something we need ongoing funds for. And the last thing is something I have been trying since being a deputy head in Hackney to get sorted and happening in Kosovo, which is reading together, or paired reading, sometimes it's called, or there are various names for similar schemes. And you might have been part of them, where local businesses, in Hackney it was NatWest Bank, asked all of their employees to give up one lunchtime a week to come and read with kids in the primary school. And they would come in and have 3 children in half an hour, so 10 minutes with each, a box of lovely picture books, and they would simply offer the experience of reading a story to someone who doesn't have maybe parents who speak English, or maybe parents who can't read, or perhaps parents who just don't have time to read with them. Those children who are most struggling to have access to storybooks and story language and the excitement of reading together. And I just think this is a real winner that would be very easy to do in Kosovo. We certainly have enough children who don't have parents who can read and write. And to start that, actually, we need a very small amount of money for a box of books and for a little bit of transport and the initial training for the volunteers, which I'll do for free. So this is something that I just need enough people to kind of say, that's a really good idea, we'll chip in for the books, and I reckon we could get it started. And so far I'm struggling with that one to find. I've also been trying to find the local businesses to do that, but we've got enough volunteers now who've said, yeah, we'll do it if there's the infrastructure in place. So that was the money, and that's telling you how you can transfer the money, which is details you don't need to absorb now. But I suppose what I want to emphasise is one-off donations are fantastic and enable us to suddenly say, we can, that thing we've been wanting to do, we'll do it with that sum of money, like we did with Rabia's salary. And small one-off donations are equally wonderful because we always allocate them immediately in our budget to know what that is going to go towards. Regular small donations are even more wonderful because it means that we can know that €5 of every month is going to be covered, or €10 or whatever it is. So thinking, choosing between making a one-off donation or a regular one is probably the difference between buying, funding something that's already going, or us saying we've got enough money to start Rabia working with the young girls. So, thinking about the balance between one-off and regular donations. We have PayPal. We have a UK bank account, which is a community account with the co-op. Of course, we will soon be able to have a charity bank account with gift aid. But at the moment, we do have gift aid available because we have this appeal on global giving called Get a Kosovan Kid to School. And you get your gift aid. We don't get any gift aid benefit from that, but you get your gift aid benefit if you donate to that. So if you or people you know are interested in donating money, those are some ways. But it's not just money. This is the third thing, the fourth thing rather. This is the your social networks. And this is the bit that I said I think is undervalued by all of us. And really everything that we have achieved has happened because of social networks. Graham Crane will know that there is a family housed in Fushkosov that only happened because Celia introduced me to Graham, who introduced me to Arsim, and that family is now in a house. Those things, they needed money, they needed time, they needed, skills, but without that social networking of Celia and Graham, they wouldn't have happened, however much money we had had. And I can give you just hundreds of examples like that, of people sharing information online or through their contacts. So just please think, even if you have no time to give, no money to give, you feel you've got no skills to give, please think about whether you could link tip with your company, for example. I already have one person saying, okay, I've got my own company. How about if every time I invoiced, I wrote at the bottom of the invoice, proud to support the Ideas Partnership, a certain amount of your money will go to this cause with a website. That is a fabulous way that that we benefit, not just from a financial donation, but from spreading the word. Or your church, we've had wonderful support from faith groups. And recently I've started doing talks in schools, which have led to some great connections. Schools raise money, schools have people who are going to go on gap years and need volunteering. Schools are interested in doing business projects, like they were saying, the girl I was mentioning who said, I can tell you what teenage girls like to buy. Her teacher then said, well, why don't you do that as a case study for your business studies project? And that, of course, would be a huge benefit to us as well as for her. And even if you're not in schools directly or don't have kids in schools directly, probably all of you have got connections with a school, your old school, your local school or whatever. So just being able to put us in touch or give us the name of someone for us to go and talk to may well lead to all of those things, and your job is done. I've also done 2 Scouts groups recently. I did the Hampstead Scouts group, which was extremely well heeled. They said, we normally give people a box of chocolates, but here's £100, which made me wonder what the box of chocolates would have been like. Another Scouts group didn't give me £100, but it was lovely, and I thought that was a great experience, and I'd shared what we did. And the next day I got an email from a woman saying, my daughter hasn't stopped talking about your talk, we'd like to make a regular monthly donation. So, those connections, again, that just came through a friend whose children went to the Scout group saying, why don't you go along? So I'm always happy to come and give talks. You've all now got the DVD, or you will have the DVD. You are armed yourselves with being able to do a talk. And even if none of that will work for you, befriending us on Facebook so that all of your friends see that what we're doing, or on Twitter, or on Instagram, will all have effects beyond what either of us can imagine.